Namaste. Welcome back to Waking Up with Mindful Serenity Yoga with Nancy. And we're going to go right into the jar and pull out another question to answer, and we're going to try to answer within a 10-minute time frame. These questions are going to be related to higher consciousness and to developing ourselves in a way that helps us to process through life in a more wholesome and more giving and more open way than we previously would have. So that is my mission. That's why I'm here answering these questions. I've been practicing yoga for 25 some years, studying all types of ancient wisdom from all different traditions, as well as psychology, philosophy, poetry, anything I can get my hands on that was going to help me to learn, to understand life better, and to help me process through life better so that I'm giving more than I'm receiving. So that is my mandate and my mission, and these questions are there to help me do that. At the same time, hopefully, be a benefit to somebody else. So the question I'm pulling out is, and I've already pulled it out, I'm not going to lie, the biology of reaction versus the psychology of reaction. So that's pretty cool. What is the difference between the biology of reaction and the psychology of reaction? I am going to start my timer. And I'm going to take a deep breath. What is the difference between the biology and the psychology of a reaction? Well, first of all, what is a reaction? A reaction is a counteraction to an action. It is the effect of a cause. So if you came over and slapped me across the face, my reaction might be to slap you right back across the face. That is a reaction. Reactions differ from response. In response, what we tend to have before the behavioral reaction occurs, or the behavioral action, and the behavioral action can also be a mental or emotional type of action. It may just be internal, but it's still an action. It's still the effect of a certain cause, okay? So I can, in a response, have time between the stimulus and the behavior. And in that second or two pause, I may choose a reaction that's more wholesome and more healthy than the automatic reaction I might have conditioned to follow, were I not more evolved. So the process of learning to respond rather than react is part of us becoming better human beings, and it's something we all should be practicing. I don't like the word should, but we'd all benefit from practicing and mastering. So there is a difference between responding and reacting. So reaction tends to be when I think of it as bodily or psychologically, it seems to be a conditioned way of responding to an external stimuli. Or an internal stimuli, because that internal stimuli because something that's emerging from the deep, something stuff that's coming up for whatever reason. It's unpleasant or it's pleasant, and we may be reacting to it. Reactions are not always negative. Reactions can be positive as well. But we're going to focus mostly on the reaction related to stress or a stressor, so we have a better handle on what the difference between a biological and psychological reaction is. So in the body, we have a brain, and the brain is part of the body. I want to make a distinction between the brain and the mind. The mind is basically our consciousness that is filtered through the brain. It is not our thoughts and feelings. The brain does not house our thoughts and feelings. They come from the mind. And if you were to dissect my brain right now, you would not find any part of my brain where the memories or thoughts are. You would not find them. We can show parts of the brain on PET scans and MRIs and things like that are activated when we're thinking or feeling something, but we can't actually see the thoughts, the feelings, or the memories. Okay, so the brain is not the mind. Thoughts and feelings, interpretations of the five senses into the information we get from the environment are all in the mind, and then they're filtered through the brain, and the brain sends messages to the remainder of the body, so the body learns to respond and react to these messages. So in stress response, it's all a result of perceiving a threat. There's a part of your brain called the amygdala that's always on alert and on guard for danger. And it is the warning center of the brain. It will pick up what it perceives as danger, and it will send a message to the body automatically, so the body responds by activating the ANS, or the autonomic nervous system, which turns on the switch for the sympathetic nervous system, which is your stress response and which is responsible for fight or flight or freeze. We have cortisol and adrenaline being pumped through the blood. We have a need for more oxygen and more blood to the muscles in the arms and the legs so they can fight, flight, or freeze. So we have a rise in heart rate and respirations. We breathe faster. Blood pressure goes up. Pupils are dilated. Muscles are tense and ready to fight or flight or freeze. So we feel that activation in the body because of a perceived threat. The amygdala has sent a warning, and within seconds, we have the sympathetic nervous system firing off and doing what it does to create that sense of we have to survive this particular danger that we are experiencing. It is there. The amygdala is a primal part of the brain that's been there for centuries in the human species in order to preserve the human body so we can reproduce and carry on the species. It is primal in the sense that it isn't most animals, and the reaction we have when the amygdala is firing is very normal and natural. Our physiological or biological response or reaction to either pull away from danger, or to fight the danger, or to hide from the danger is why we survived as long as we did. But it's not necessarily a true response to a physical danger. We can get that sense of threat to our survival even when we're not facing the mother lion on the Serengeti plain, even though we're not running in to save somebody from a fire, even though we're not in a near-miss car accident. We can still have that sense of adrenaline running through our bodies, the activation of the muscles, the heart rate, the blood pressure, the heavy breathing, that sense of doom and gloom, when the threat that we're facing is not biological, when our body is not at risk of being hurt or killed. We can get it when we sense that the psychological me, the little me, the psyche, the persona, the thing I call little me, is at threat of being diminished or demised. So we will have the same response psychologically if I feel that you're hurting my feelings, or if you're going to diminish my ego by shaming me in front of somebody else. I'll have the same type of reaction. Or if I am at the risk of being exposed in my most vulnerable form, if someone suddenly says, okay, you're going to go up and speak in front of these 600 people, and I'm going to be exposed and open up there, I'm going to have that sense of doom and gloom. I'm going to have the activation of the amygdala, sending a warning system to the sympathetic nervous system. I'm going to have all those things happening, the heart rate rising, the blood pressure rising, that sense that I have to do something in order to survive. It's not the body that's at risk here, though I have the same type of reaction. It is the sense of little me. And what is really important about that to note is that the little me, unlike the body, is just a mental construct, something I created, right? The little me is this idea I have of myself. And it is so much a belief in me that this little me is real and separate and alone and vulnerable and worthy of protection and defense and at risk, that I believe it. It has become who I am. I see myself as little me. So with any type of psychosocial threat, if any type of thing that's going to diminish this idea of me that I'm clinging to and define myself as, I am going to have that biological reaction I get when I'm facing the mother lion on the Serengeti plain. It's just the way it works. And if I have this activation all the time because I'm so attached to this little me, and if I see this little me constantly at risk and unsafe and vulnerable to predators, even though the predators mean nothing more than a boss who gets angry at me every now and again, or a social media page that I feel exposed on, then I am at risk of really overusing that sympathetic nervous system response to the point of me getting ill. This is what anxiety is. Anxiety is a misperceiving of a biological threat, a psychological threat, as a biological one, and thus activating the amygdala, which is basically only here to keep the body alive. And it's using that response in an attempt to save something that isn't even real, this idea we have of little me. Then that's something we have to look at, is it not? First thing we have to do is realize how we're reacting biologically and how we're using that biological defense mechanism for the reasons that it wasn't meant to be used, and we're therefore overusing it. And that's why we see such an epidemic of anxiety today, is people are overusing this defense mechanism, overusing this biological survival mechanism by perceiving threats where there is no threat, by perceiving a psychosocial threat as a biological one, because we are so attached to this idea of me. We see it as real, and if we see it as real, we're going to do whatever we can to protect it from being hurt or destroyed. And that is why we have the strong psychological reactions we do. But we have to remember there's a distinction by looking at the threat. Is this really a threat to my physical survival? It's what we need to ask when we encounter something that we feel the anxiety reaction or the stress reaction occurring. Is this really a threat to my physiological survival? No, it's a threat to my psychosocial survival. Okay, so if it's a threat to my psychosocial survival, am I really at risk here? What is at risk? Just this idea I have of me. Am I this me? And that's where the spiritual practice comes in, or the higher self-development practice comes in, because you're going to go beyond the little me to see that you are just observing it in action, observing it reacting, whether it be through a biological reaction or a psychological reaction. You're observing it. It is not who you are. You are the conscious observer behind the reaction. And when you create enough space to sit back there to watch the reaction, you'll find that the reaction almost diminishes automatically, and the body calms down. The amygdala stops firing, therefore the sympathetic system gets turned off, and the very natural parasympathetic mode of experiencing this life comes into play again. And we rest and digest, and we process life for what it is, not in this threat, victim, predator, prey mode that we are so attached to. Well, that's all I have to say about that. I hope that makes sense. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Namaste.